Hey collectors, welcome back to the workshop. Today we're talking books, but not just any book. We are talking about Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Or is it Piranesi? I don't know how to pronounce this. Piranesi? Piranesi? Piranesi. Piranesi. Piranesi? It's Liviosa, not Liviosa. Wait, that's something else. Piranesi's house is no ordinary building. Its rooms are infinite, its corridors endless. Its walls are lined with thousands upon thousands of statues, each one different from all the others. Within the labyrinth of halls, an ocean is imprisoned. Waves thunder up staircases, rooms are flooded in an instant. But Piranesi is not afraid. He understands the tides as he understands the patterns of the labyrinth itself. He lives to explore the house. Piranesi introduces an astonishing new world, an infinite labyrinth full of startling images and surreal beauty, haunted by the tides and the clouds. Before we get into the review itself, I want to take a moment to showcase this edition of Piranesi, just so you have a clear idea of what to expect if you decide to pick this up. This is the standard hardback edition of the book. It's actually on the smaller side for a hardcover, measuring about 5 3/4 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. For a bit of context, here it is next to a standard paperback edition of Solaris. You can see that it's only about 1/2 inch bigger overall. This is roughly the size you'd get if you ordered the paperback edition of Piranesi. And in contrast, here it is next to a more typical hardback. This is my copy of Ender's Game, which is much more in line with what most people think of when they picture a hardcover. It's about 3/4 inch wider and a full inch taller than Piranesi. The dust jacket itself is really nice though. I am a big fan of the design with this copper and white artwork against this slate colored background. It's not quite pure black, but it does have a matte finish that gives it a slightly more premium feel. That said, the matte finish does seem a little more prone to scuffs and fingerprints, I noticed. You can see here a small mark on the front, and on the back there's a bit of fingerprinting from just normal handling. Because of that, I'd recommend either taking the jacket off while you are reading or protecting it with some Mylar. The copper design is reflective and embossed though, and it looks really striking in the light, as you can see. And this wave motif does continue all the way across the entire length of the jacket. The book itself also features some copper debossing, which is a nice touch. I especially like how the design flows from the back to the front, and these faded details near the bottom of the pillar design, they almost look like waterline corrosion, which feels very appropriate for this book. The end papers feature graphic seashells and sea creature designs, and they match on both ends. It's simple but effective. Finally, this is a glued binding, not sewn, so it does not lay flat on a table. And over time, there is a chance pages could loosen with heavy use. Overall, though, this is a solid little edition. Nothing extravagant, but thoughtfully designed and well suited to the book. To dive right into this one, or perhaps wading through it, would be more appropriate for this book. I'll just start by saying I really liked it. I don't think it's greatest of all time books for me for a few reasons that I'll talk about. But overall, it's beautifully crafted, whimsical, endearing, and I haven't really stopped thinking about it that much for the past days. It's a quiet book, a still book. It asks you to slow down in ways that most stories don't. And I'd say it's really not about the plot. I think the idea of the plot in this book is actually a trap for the reader. Because to me, this book is really about isolation, loneliness, compassion, and about what it means to look at the world with wonder when you don't really understand everything about it. On the surface, Piranesi does present a mystery, right? There are questions, there are unknowns, there are characters with questionable motivations. There's this sense that some things don't quite add up. But for me, the mystery wasn't really the point. To use a metaphor a little bit more appropriate with the content of the book, I'd say the plot is more like the scaffolding that Clarke is standing on as she's chipping away at these greater themes and creating, a piece of art or statue of her own. So the plot for me is just there so that we have a thread to pull. The heart of this book lives somewhere else completely. It lives in stillness, in observation, in the act of paying attention. Clarke invites us to view the world through a childlike lens. Not childish, but unconditioned. As adults, I think we move through this world assuming we already understand everything that we're looking at. A hallway is just a hallway. A room is just a room. A statue is just a statue. But Piranesi asks, what if those things still mattered or mattered again? One of the things I love about this book is how it treats wonder as something fragile or even rare. Growing up can feel like losing the ability to be moved by ordinary things. Not because they stop being beautiful, but maybe because we stop questioning them or observing them. We categorize, we label, and then we move on. Piranesi doesn't move on. He notices. He catalogs. He treats the world he lives in as worthy of reverence simply because it exists. I mean, how beautiful is that concept? There's something deeply compassionate about that way of seeing the world, especially when it's applied to pain, loneliness, and suffering. This is a book about isolation, but not in a loud, dramatic sense. It's a quiet isolation, the kind that feels normal when you're living inside of it for long enough. And I think that's something many of us can relate to. What struck me too is how Clarke reflects some very dark themes and ideas like control, loss, disconnection. But she does that through a narrator who doesn't yet have the experience or understanding to fully name what those are. The lack of experience softens the darkness without erasing it. Pain isn't dramatized. It's simply there, observed with patience and with care. And that does create a strange emotional effect, right? The book feels gentle when what it's describing isn't gentle at all. A more experienced observer will reflect on what Piranesi is experiencing and understand it for what it is, whereas the character isn't taking the mindset into that direction. Now, here's where I need to be honest. The mystery itself, right, the forward momentum of the plot didn't really grab me. I understood the purpose of the plot within the story, and I think it was tightly constructed. But to me, it functioned more, like I said, as almost the water currents that led us towards our destination. I realized very quickly that I didn't keep reading this book because I needed answers, because I wanted to know what was happening. I kept reading it because I wanted to stay within its way of looking at the world. And so if you are someone who reads primarily for plot devices and big reveals. This book might feel restrained, maybe even distant. It surely did for me. I'd almost say that for me, reading this book was like sitting in a silent room for much longer than you've ever been used to, and realizing slowly that silence isn't empty. I haven't really stopped thinking about this book after reading its last pages, not because I was confounded or amazed by the ending or its twists and turns, but because it trained me to notice things differently while I was reading through it. It reminded me that attention is a form of care, that meaning doesn't always announce itself, that sometimes the most profound stories are the ones that refuse to hurry. Now I'm thinking about how easily wonder is lost and how rarely we try to get it back. I'd recommend Piranesi if you're in the mood for a book that values reflection over resolution. If you enjoy stories that are more meditative than urgent. If you're open to ambiguity. And if you don't mind a mystery that exists more to support ideas rather than dominate them. Piranesi is not a book to consume quickly. However, it is a very smooth read. The prose is excellent. Pages just flow. But that's another trap, because this book is meant to be sat with. A reminder that the world doesn't lose its magic. We just stop asking it to show us any. And for a little while, this book taught me how to look for it again. All right, collectors, those are my thoughts on Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. As always, thank you for watching. Have you read this book? What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. Please consider subscribing, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, keep collecting.